Hi everyone, so welcome back to my guide on how to execute a good Ironman. Today we're still talking about transitions, the T1, and this is part two. So last episode we touched on a couple of things, what you're going to wear, and the next, for example, underneath your wetsuit, but also what are you then going to wear for the bike leg. We talked about practicing running with your bike, which is a good skill for any kind of triathlon. And then we also talked about how you're going to mount your bike, whether you're going to have shoes on, whether you're going to have shoes on the bike. Also, just think about things like your drink bottle sticking up. Be mindful when you are at the mount line in an Ironman, actually any race, of other people. If you're a slower athlete, go to the side because you don't want a faster athlete coming through you and having a crash. So there's some of the things to think about, to have a plan for, and to practice. So now we're going to talk about kind of race week and what happens when you turn up to an event. And Ironman's a bit different to most races in the sense that one of the key things is you rack your bike the day before. Small races, local races, sprint races, often you'll rack your bike race morning. You ball on down, rack your bike, do your thing, go for a swim, and you're in. Ironman and big races are always a bit different. But there's other couple of things you need to think about. So even before you turn up at a race, go online, have a look at the maps, and think about, for example, how far is it from the swim to the bike? Think about what's the first part of the bike course going to be like, which you might not be able to find out until you get there. But just have a look at the maps, just get your head around it. Like Ironman New Zealand is quite a long run from the water to your bike. Pembrokeshire, you have come out the water, you have an extra bag with shoes to put on to run to your bike because it's about 800 meters, I think. I was watching it one year, and the lead bike was following Dylan McNeice, and when you're watching something, go, he's been running for quite a while. So, have an idea, because that, like if you're doing that race, you'll need to pack an extra pair of run shoes just for that run. So, each race presents a different challenge. So have a look at the maps, kind of get them in your head. And some races have, swim to bike and bike to run transitions can be in two different locations. So, you kind of want to get your head around that. And often you can't really get into the transition area the day before. Sometimes you can have a wee look a couple of days out as they're setting it up just to get your head around. So let's talk about some of the things to think about. So obviously you want to walk all the routes so you know where you're going. So say hypothetically day before the race, let's talk about that. You've kind of looked, and Ricky did a little bit, but you want to walk the route from the water through where the bags are going to be, because you'll have to drop your bags off, which is your gear bags. Through the tent, and then through to where your bike is. Okay, you really want that in your head. And then you also need to walk the route from where your bike is to where the bike mount point is. Okay, so that's fundamental. You need to get that in your head. But the other thing, if you're the sort of athlete that's going to have the shoes on the bike and then going to get up to speed and put your feet in your shoes while you're riding along, then you want to recce the first K or so of the bike course, because quite often a lot of the bike courses, you might be coming out of a complex, so it might be quite twisty and turny, and it might be that you just keep riding with your feet on top of your shoes until you get out onto a straight piece of road where it's actually safe to put your feet in your shoes, because the last thing you want to be doing is wandering around looking down at your feet trying to get your feet into the shoes while that's tight and twisty, and there might be poor swimmers who are better cyclists trying to get past, and again, pandemonium's the word. So have a think about that and have a wee recce, and so that, again, it comes back to that having a plan, so that right, I've looked at it. It might be that I'm going to wait till I get right. I'm going to jump on the bike, get up to speed, and then when I get to this part of the course, that's where I'm going to look to put my feet into my shoes. I'll have a bit of space, and then I can get into my day. So that's something that you need to have in your head. You need to have all the routes of where you're going. And again, we'll talk about the T2, the bike to run, and when we get to that later in the piece. because it's about the same. And if it's the same spot, you'll have a fair idea when you're walking around. So that's first up, you need to walk all the routes. So then the other thing is that you're dropping off your gear bag. And what you need to do is, we talked briefly about your gear bag in the sense that you're dropping off the day before. You're going to have, what you're going to have in there might be, you might have your cycling shoes, you might have your helmet, you might have an extra layer of clothes, you might have all your food. So, you drop that off the day before. You might have, a pair of gloves or something just in case the weather turns to poos. You might have a vest. So, you will have sorted out based on where the race is going to be, what the general temperature is going to be. So you kind of have a plan. And, as I said, if you're racing in Asia, you don't need much in there because even if it's rain, it's hot. Whereas if you're racing in Northern Hemisphere or down here in New Zealand, then it runs the risk of being cool. So the other thing is you need to, once you rack your bag, because there'll be basically rows of racks with all hooks and they're all kind of numbered. You need to make sure you know where your bag is. And you need to be able to, in the heat of the battle, know that, for example, when you come out, I need to be in this row of racks. This is where my bag will be. And if it's in the top row or the bottom row, because it's usually too high, and it's roughly so far along. I'm in Malaysia. My bag was on the bottom row, near the far end. But the cool thing is there was a concrete support base for the racking. And I worked out in the day before the race, when you're doing what we're talking about, I'd worked out that all I had to do was run along into the row that my bag was in, look for that concrete support base, take one step, bend down, and my bag was there. And the critical thing is make sure you're grabbing your bag. Make sure you know your race number and you make sure that the bag you grab, because there's a lot of them. Especially if you're in front of the pack swimmer, because there's not many bags gone. If you're at the back end of the field and you come there, it's going to be a lot easier. As awful as it sounds, it's going to be a lot easier. I know for a fact that at Ironman Malaysia, my bag was sitting out to the front because race morning, I had a sneaky wee walk past and just went down and pulled it to the front a little bit, and positioned it so it was kind of on top of the others. But I knew I was going to be front of the pack. So that was the thing. I came running along, looked down, saw the concrete plinth, took a step, bent down, saw my bag, checked it was mine, because somebody could have done the same thing after I'd wandered off, checked it was my number, grabbed it, and I was away. Okay. So then into the transition tent, which you know where you're going. Make sure you go into the gent, not the ladies, or vice versa, depending on your sex. If you're gender neutral, I don't know what you do. That's, I don't know, too complicated for me. I'm not going to get into that. Anyhow, the appropriate one for what your gender is. And one thing I want to touch on briefly is sunscreen. I don't know if I've talked about sunscreen in any of the episodes, but sunscreen talk is basically the night before the race, you put sunscreen on, it gets absorbed into your body, race morning, you top it up. It's always worth having a little bit of sunscreen in your gear bag for swim to bike, or even bike to run. And because there is sunscreen usually in the tent, but quite often it can be pandemonium. So if you've got a little Ziploc bag and a towel or something like that, you can just put your hand in. I would do neck, face, arms if they're going to be exposed, maybe top to the legs, and go. It's always worth stopping for sunscreen. Can't stress that enough. You're playing the long game. If you're racing in the Southern Hemisphere, the sun here is fierce. It will baste you. So it's definitely worth stopping. But basically what we're talking about is, so you know the route, you know what the plan is, then you're going to go out of the tent and you're going to know exactly where you're going for your bike. You need to know, okay, it's in row B or whatever it is, however they've numbered them, and I'm halfway down, and halfway down you start looking for your bike. And then you're going to grab your bike and head off. Let's talk about racking your bike. So generally what you want your bike facing out, so hooked by the seat. When you rack it the day before the race, generally I rack my bike nose in and I rested on the 2 brake levers, so that it's basically there's 2 levers and then the back wheel, so it creates like a more stable platform. In race morning, I turn it around, and depending on your bike, so I'm going to use this as a prop because I did the other talk earlier. If you bottle there, you can actually sit your bike, the pole there, and then that's your seat post right there, right? So the pole of the bike, so when you come in, you just pick your bike up and go over. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. The other way, if that's the pole, you rack it like that, and then basically you drop it back, drop it down, and roll it out underneath. If you're doing this underneath, just make sure that with all the bikes and all the gear that your bike actually goes under, if that makes sense. I've been at small races where people have done that, racked it, and then they've gone off, and then doesn't happen in Ironman, but half a dozen people turned up, the racks bowed a little bit, and then they've come out the water, and then they're like, and they're having to lean their bike at an angle to get through. So whatever way that you do, overnight I'd rack it front and rest it on the brake levers. It just creates a state, just in case it's windy. Race morning, as I said, I tend to have mine sitting like that, so that then I can just pick it up and go. We'll talk about race morning another piece. The reality is that rack your bike, and then so you need to know where your bike's racked, and then you need to know where the mount line is. And then the other thing that we talked about is you need to know where you're going to put, if you're going to put your fitness shoes, what the first kilometre or so of the bike ride's like. So they're the fundamentals, but the key thing is that you need to know the routes. You need to know from swim to where your bag is, to where the tent is, to where your bike is, to where the bike exit is. That all needs to be dialed in. When I'm walking transition the day before, I'm looking at the ground for any obstacles, any potholes, any tree roots. If I see any stones, because they generally have carpet, but if I see any stones or twigs that have fallen off, I'll pick them up and put them to the side, because sod's law says it'll be me that stands in it on race morning, and you don't want to cut a foot at the start of an Ironman. So can't reiterate enough is just knowing the routes, knowing where you're going, knowing where your bag's going to be, and that makes your life easy for race day. So you don't actually have to think, because you'll see it all the time. There's people come out of the tent and it's like, where the hell's my bike? Or they get to their bike and what way am I going now? All of that stuff it's just stress and drama that you don't need. You want to be the athlete that hits the water. Okay, this is a long run to up to the bike, or it's a short run. But it's a case of where you're going, and that you calm. Where your bag is, so you're not looking at you've not gone down the wrong rack and then had to come back and find your gear bag, or you in your haste you've picked up what you thought was yours, got to transition, opened up, and it's somebody else's gear. So it's all about being process driven. It's all about getting to your bike, getting it out the rack, running to the mountain line, getting on your bike and getting away. Doesn't need to be the fastest transition, but it does need to be kind of smooth and consistent. And it's about not leeching time, because you can lose a lot of time incrementally over the course of the day just by not being attentive. So there's some things to think about. You just need to think about the routes, where you're going, where everything is, and then it should be quite smooth, and you want to make your life as easy as possible come race day. So they're the things you need to think about. And next episode we'll just talk about transition, race morning, and doing a transition. So peace out from me. I will see you next episode. See you later. Bye bye.